I feel loot boxes aren't going away anytime soon, but Electronic Arts doing what Electronic Arts does best and over-fucking-reaching like fuck certainly has them on the back foot, which is nice to see. To wit, Need for Speed Payback, otherwise known as Need for Speed Kickback due to the amount of money EA wanted to make off the fucking thing, has kind of flown under the radar, overshadowed as it was by Star Wars Battlefront 2, but this other EA published game, an entry in the long-running and much-loved Need for Speed franchise, obviously it's got Need for Speed in its name, really wasn't all that much better than the bullshit that was going on with Star Wars Battlefront 2, with its own glorified gambling system that gave you, yep, real in-game advantages. Very much like Star Wars Battlefront 2, Need for Speed Payback favoured grinding over playing, using the old excuse of, we're just saving people time, to try and railroad players into the online marketplace so that they could unlock these fucking loot boxes and upgrade their vehicles. But then Star Wars Battlefront 2 came out, Reddit shat all over it, mainstream news sources picked it up, Disney apparently had a phone call with Electronic Arts and said, hey, you're making us look bad, fucking cut it out, and we all know what happened there. But the Battlefront Backlash appears to have had a knock-on effect with Need for Speed as Electronic Arts scrabbles to save face and try and keep loot boxes more palatable, more acceptable, try and stymie this backlash as much as it can. So it is that Need for Speed Payback will not be removing the microtransactions as did Star Wars Battlefront 2, albeit temporarily, but it is updating to try and make them a little less insulting, a little less of a gacha scheme fuckover. In a nutshell, they're just going to give you more XP for playing the game. Imagine that, actually playing a video game and getting a reward for it. That's novel, isn't it? How retro. Let's make one thing clear, this isn't a revolution, this isn't a U-turn, this is a walkback. A slight walkback. Electronic Arts has made it quite clear with Need for Speed and Star Wars Battlefront 2 that it wants loot boxes to be tied to player progression. It wants that. Now, of course, it wants to take some steps back from how far it reached, try and put it in a nicer package, make people a little more sweet on it, but EA seems to remain adamant that this is what it wants. Random unlocks tied to player advantages. Paid for, preferably. I mean, on top of the money you already paid to play the game in the first place. In essence, all Payback's really done is just give you more in-game rewards to try and soften the blow of that. The most controversial element of the game, the fact that you can upgrade your cars with cards, obviously, always fucking cards, that's still there. So if you think that EA have had a change of heart, don't worry, we're not all suddenly living in a Dr. Seuss book. As per the Need for Speed subreddit, here are the changes that have come into effect that you can experience right now if for some reason you're still playing this glorified gambling racing game. I'll just rattle these off. Increase the amount of rep awarded by taking part in events, increase the amount of bank awarded by taking part in events, bait crates, now reward increased rep, bait crates, now reward increased bank, competing against a roaming racer will reward you with increased rep, and roaming racer reward you increased bank. Air suspension will now appear more frequently within shipments, slightly increased rep and bank for finishing an event outside of first place. Why couldn't you have just done rep and bank for all of them, instead of making them separate bullet points? They've just made it look more impressive by having more bullet points. This is on top of prior updates that decreased the time it took for new parts to appear in tune-up shops. That went from 30 minutes, Jesus, to 10 minutes, and they increased the rate in which parts are rewarded with ranked speed lists. Now, I'm sure I don't need to tell any of you this, but for the record and in the interests of comprehension, Electronic Arts is not your friend, and they haven't done this out the kindness of their own hearts. In fact, the Need for Speed developers were justifying all of this before the game came out, parroting the tired and used up excuse of games are too expensive to make, so we have to prey upon gambling addicts. Need for Speed Payback/Kickback was content to keep its head down and try and ride this storm out, but once the Battlefront microtransactions had to be walked back, the excuse mine was all but dried up for this game. Need for Speed Payback should be far less of a mobile-style free-to-wait grindy loot fest experience, but that was only done to try and keep people off its back. just like Battlefront 2 was seemingly only updated to keep Disney and the press off its back. EA knows it's overstepped, for now, but it also knows that it can still get away with tying loot boxes and progression together. Shadow of War has already demonstrated that. When I see these walkbacks, what I mostly see are corporations just biding their time, keeping their heads down, trying to keep a lid on things, so that they can slowly reintroduce all the stuff that people got pissed off about. Maybe take it a bit more incrementally rather than get too greedy too fast like Electronic Arts recently did. One other thing I seem to have noticed is the relative swiftness with which the microtransactions were temporarily suspended in Battlefront 2, and the progression in Need for Speed Payback was made a lot more palatable. For games that apparently need these things because games are so expensive to make, Electronic Arts had little problem doing away with them when the water got too hot. In fact, EA very recently said that its earnings aren't going to be impacted by what happened with Battlefront 2. If that's the case, why do you actually need microtransactions and loot boxes? Sounds like you fucking don't! I made it quite clear by now that I'm sick of hearing that fucking excuse, and I am planning a Dreamquisition at some point to let you know exactly how sick of it I am. But in any case, things like this certainly don't make the excuse any more believable to me. Electronic Arts pleading poverty with one side of its mouth, but perfectly able to shut these revenue streams off if they get to be a bit too much of a PR disaster. You don't need them, you want them, you feckless fucks. Oh, and that analyst who said that people were overreacting about the Star Wars Battlefront, fuck off. So I just thought I'd add that bit in at the end.